Hello and welcome to Now in Zen. Today we have Stephen Altoft, and Steve, is a trumpeter, improviser, and educator. He is dedicated to the creation of new repertoire for the trumpet and flugelhorn, and for over 20 years he researched the microtonal possibilities of the trumpet with composer Donald Bousted, with Music Gilhaus in Freiburg, developed a fourth rotary valve mechanism to enable the conversion of his existing trumpets into microtonal instruments, a 19 division B flat trumpet and quarter tone C trumpet. More recently, he has also been developing programs for flugelhorn in 12, 19, and 24 divisions of the octave, and he is the director of microtonal projects who has also managed the Euro Microfest. Welcome, Steve. So glad to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. I'd love to open with how you designed this instrument. I guess my first question for you would be, how did you get the idea to design a four-valve microtonal trumpet?
Well, the idea wasn't mine. Basically, I started the microtonal trumpet with Donald Bousted, the composer and director of microtonal projects, about in 1999, after I'd got back from studying new music trumpet with Bill Foreman of Ensemble Modern, who was actually originally from the States. And we were looking at basically a three-valve quarter tone and quarter tone studies and this sort of idea. And I guess around it's all on the Microtonal Project's website when I forget stuff, but I guess around 2000 and probably around 2000, there was a center for new music instruments, CNMI, in London at the London Metropolitan, as it's now called, University, set up by Lewis Jones, a recorder player, and Patrick Ozard-Lowe, a composer, pianist, and both were researchers. And they'd appointed Donald as Leverhulme composer in residence. And as they actually wanted to build a brass quintet capable of playing in 12, 19, and 24 divisions of the octave. So through Donald, I was appointed the brass, I forget what the title was, specialist. So basically, they at this university, there's an instrument building course, and David Cowie, one of the students, had two Booz Hawkes student model trumpets, and he cut them up to create one. So he created one which was able to play in all of these tunings, as I mentioned. Plus, it had a fourth trumpet. It had a fourth piston valve added to it in order to play the microtones, which was driven by an electromagnetic solenoid. And then there was a button here, which then drove a valve up and down. So Donald was writing repertoire in 24 and 19 and 48 for this instrument. The instrument was a prototype. It never got further than that. And I moved to Freiburg here in southwest Germany in order to work more with Lee Ferguson, the Iowan percussionist who was based here, is still based here. So it was all sort of laid out for me, really. CNMI chose the tuning 19 divisions of the octave because of, the small minor sixths and the large major thirds being close to just intervals. And wind players, brass players, when we play purely with ourselves, were basically working practically in pure intervals when there's no keyboard instrument there. Obviously, as that project didn't get any further, I wanted to be able to continue playing this repertoire. So what I did actually initially was I was concerned with the 19 division repertoire because Donald had written pieces, the verses for dual contour. And so I took my B flat Bach, Vincent Bach Strat, to Musikgilhaus workshop. And I told them, about the previous project. And I said I wanted a manual instrument. I didn't want electronics on it because that held problems back, held the project back. So ostensibly, the idea of conversion kits came about because I wanted to have good quality instruments. I didn't want student model instruments, and I wanted to be able to convert them and put them back into the original form without cutting things up. So the idea came of the conversion kits, and there have been. I have a quarter tone valve built into the tune slide of my C trumpet. I think that's the original one. I've had two made from the B flat trumpet, and the second one was much more successful. And then, of course, for the 19 division trumpet in B flat. So making a quarter tone instrument is quite easy, really. I mean, you grab the right trumpet. You measure the length of the slide of the second valve, and which is it lowers by a half tone. So we took half that length and put it onto a valve which we built into the tuning slide, on which I then operate with a trigger the left hand. So it's actually this, the middle finger. So that's quite an easy thing. It works better on the C trumpet because of the narrow bore. Of course, all the first and third movable slide stuff that you do in 12, it's also exists in the 24 setup. With the B flat trumpet, this is not yet set up, by the way. It's a bit more difficult. I'm not a tuning theorist, and I'm not an instrument builder, but obviously I've learned bits and bobs going through this process. If anyone's watching the podcast and they think that I've said something wrong, do correct me. I'm not an expert. And so what we figured out was, or what my idea was, to measure the B flat trumpet, measure the main tube up until the bell flare. And then I divided that by 19 because there's 19 steps in the scale. And then the thing is, when you build a trumpet, doesn't matter what tuning you're building, you need to create enough fingerings to bridge the interval of the fifth between written middle C and the G above. So you only need 3 vowels in 12. But in 19, in order to generate the 12 various fingerings you need, in fact, the 12 harmonic series you need a fourth vowel. There's no way around it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the trumpet up so you can see how it works.
Yes.
So the first valve on a normal trumpet lowers by a major second step. And the second lowers by a half tone step, right? And then the third lowers by a minor third. And that generates these 7 positions. In order to come up with fingerings that are not too different from the standard fingerings, I chose to also have a whole tone put in 19 division. The first valve.
You're changing out the slides there.
I have to change out the valve slides. Yeah, that was the first valve slide. And the second valve slide is also a half step, but in 19. So this is a longer one. Sort of see how long it is. Again, on the in our PDF book, there are more photographs of this. The book is available through our website, our resources folder. And then I also wanted a minor third for the third valve slide. So here what I actually do is I add just 2 bits of tubing which extends this slide
Ah,
to be in 5/19. So we get the minor third. And where is it? The fourth valve is 1/19.
wow.
It's really great how it really has worked out. So it means that choosing, the same intervals for each, named intervals for each valve in 19 as in 12 means that my fingers have the same function in 12 as in 19. When it's in the notation, the flats are not every flat, but generally at the standard natural fingering plus the fourth valve and the sharps, apart from a couple of exceptions of the normal fingerings that I know from 12. This was important to me to get to be able to transfer between playing various tunings for the 12, the 1924 easily. And as you mentioned, I've developed now a microtonal flugelhorn, which I also have here, which has the same fingerings, of course. It's basically the same system. So the same thing, even the same finger is in the left hand. The middle finger is employed with the fourth extra valve. That's how the instrument came about and how we put it together.
That's a great story. It seems like you may have answered a lot of my extra questions here. So as far as I understand it, you have 3 valves and they move the trumpet's intervals by fixed distances, and then the extra fourth valve is like a microtone. So like on that 19-tone trumpet that you mentioned, it's 1/19th of an octave.
Yeah, exactly. I had to change the proportions of the tubes of the slides that are fixed to the valves in order to produce a chromatic instrument. There was a 3 valve 19 div trumpet built by Swift and Unique. I
Mm,
think in 1980 they released an article in the Interval magazine, but they were not full. It wasn't a fully chromatic instrument because you need
right.
4 valve. That's the precursor, so to say, to this instrument. The trumpet is a semi-fixed pitched instrument,
Yes.
and I say it's semi because each valve has a particular slide of a particular length attached to it. But because we can alter the pitch with our embouchure, because our jaws move below in the bottom jaw is movable, then this is quite easy. But going upwards, this is fixed and it's less easy. We use things like the tongue and blowing differently. But obviously, that changes the pitch. I wanted a homogeneous instrument. And the more you go off center, the more that affects stamina.
Right.
Um, yeah.
So you recalculated the tube sizes in order to add
Yeah.
a fourth valve. Is that because the proportions for 19 tone equal temperament are slightly different, or because you would have to do that regardless when adding a fourth valve to a 3 valve system?
But if you want to divide the octave differently than 12 or 24, you have to have different slide lengths on
Right.
than normal. So that was gonna have to be the case. The CNMI instrument in London, they actually did something that I didn't want to do. They cut the lead pipe length,
Ah,
um, which I didn't want to do because I want to be able to keep my instrument as it was. So that means that the overtone series on when I don't press the valves is still a 12 division 12 tone series, and so I have to use false fingerings to achieve the few notes that are on that series.
Hmm.
Obviously, this instrument is built on a pitch of B flat, so the 19 steps go in both directions away from this B flat. So sounding B flat, as we know it, whether you're in 442 land, 443 land,
Yeah,
440 land, whatever, um, what we count as sounding B flat is our tuning note. It's a note that we can tune with anyone who's in 12 with, and the steps go away from that. It's difficult to actually make with this system to make an instrument that plays more than 24 notes to the octave because this quarter tone slide is the short
yes.
at the moment. It's the shortest amount of slide that you can actually bend,
I see. So,
amount of tubing that can bend. So
yeah.
um, Yamaha made an instrument for the professor here in Freiburg, um, Wim van Hasselt.
Hmm.
Um, and I hadn't ever seen it, but I'm told by Gilhouse, who've seen it, Sigmar Fischer, the guy in the workshop, that it's more like a dimple type thing than a slide. It's it's fashioned
That might be even
um,
more radical than
like a wart.
the slide. Yeah.
Yeah. So that will probably be the way to go if you wanted to have smaller intervals and use this system. So, if you wanted to use this system to play in different tuning system, then it would have to be less than 24. If it was going to be more than 19, as between 19 and what I have as 24, I would have actually had to have altered my instrument in another way. And that's, these receivers, if I turn the instrument this way around, these receivers
Ah,
would have
yes.
had to have been cut and shortened.
Ah.
And I didn't want that because we have to move the first valve slide to tune when we're playing in 12, when we're playing standard repertoire stuff. And if you make the receivers shorter, then while you're playing, you could take the slide off.
Right. So does that mean that uh could you play standard 12 tone equal temperament on a 24 tone equal tempered trumpet then?
I could. I mean, basically, with the C trumpet, it just, where is it? It would just mean that if I want to play in 12 on, I just don't use this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't
And
even have to
that's
redo the fingering.
simple. No, it's really simple. In fact, when I'm playing in new music ensembles, my C quarter tone trumpet is my standard instrument. Um,
Yes.
so it's whereas on the 19 division trumpet, I know you had this question, could he play in 12? Well, we had a colleague who we worked with the duo Contour, the pianist Thomas Wenck, and he's a very humorous guy, and he had a concept. I think it was five obstructions, the name of the piece, and so one of the obstructions he thought up for me was to play in 12 on the 19. Um, and yeah, well, there's no, well, in a serious way, there's no point because I can change this instrument very quickly into 12. Um, but as I've said, the series on open is the same as in 12.
So that means that you're using the open harmonic series on both the 12, 24, and 19 tone equal tempered trumpets. And so you're massaging the intonation of all of them a little bit, but the tubing is still recalculated a little for each instrument.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be recalculated for 12 or 24, of course. It's just
Right.
it's simply because I didn't have the lead pipe cut down on the um, B flat trumpet, then yeah, that side of the instrument didn't change. But as my ears got better, it's sort of um, you get used to making these changes, these small changes, and it works. Um,
Right. Do you make any significant adjustments in technique when you're playing a four valve microtonal trumpet, whether they be standard techniques or extended techniques?
the only difference is that I'm using the fourth valve. I've got a fourth valve, the left hand. I had to learn, it needed to learn this new coordination. It's easier on the quarter-tone trumpet because you add between the steps that you already have, right?
Right.
On the on the 19 division, then it's it's not a regular pattern. If you're playing, a chromatic scale, which I don't do very often in a piece,
Right.
um, then obviously I practice chromatic scales, but you get used to this sort of rhythm of what it's like a percussionist, what this finger would do. I wouldn't say that any techniques, trumpet techniques, or even extended techniques are different. We have on the Microtonal Project's YouTube channel the four videos from a few years back, and one of them is specifically for extended techniques. One is just for split tones, and
Mm-hmm.
no, it doesn't change anything there. The difficulty is that if I'm asked to sing and play at the same time, and I have to sing in 19,
Right. Right.
fortunately, I haven't had anything that's been virtuosic for singing yet.
Yet. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's not a technique that I enjoy doing. It tends to sort of really screw up my throat a bit. But there are several pieces where I'm adding the voice at times. I don't know if you've come across this piece. It's a fairly new piece, Kerata for Straton, that was written by a Canadian, Coreen Morsink, and she's based in Athens.
Is
And
that the new piece you put out recently?
oh, I put out a sound cloud version of it originally. We had at the Hyperchromatic Festival in London. I gave the first live performance, and the video came out. Yeah, it came out a couple of months back, I guess. Oh
Yeah.
no, actually, it didn't. It was just simply that the live stream is available. Yeah, the separate video is not yet out. I misspoke. Yeah, if I play the beginning of that, you hear several techniques.
Upon seeing your trumpets in person, I realized I was imagining the physical layout of it slightly differently. I imagined that when you had a fourth valve, that it would be on top like the other ones, but instead it's to the side. Is there
Yeah.
an explanation for that?
So four valve trumpets, usually people know them from the piccolo trumpets that people play Baroque music on when they're not using a natural trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all in a line. They're ergonomic. So the
Right.
fourth one's slightly offset because our little finger is shorter than the rest. Um, and although some people use a finger from the left hand to play the piston valve as well, it
Mm-hmm.
depends, depends on the piece as well. Um, and Actually, it's much easier to build a fourth valve into the instrument if you use a rotary valve than use a piston valve, because that's going to be rotary valves that we know from French horns,
Right.
and you can build that much easily into a tuning slide. And I can remove this slide. It's gone, and put a normal slide in. Now, if you're putting a big chunky piston valve on, then it's going to be there basically forever.
Ah,
Um,
it's so cool
and
how you can. It's so cool how you can mod the trumpet, though. Essentially, like you just take out one part and put in
yeah,
another one. It reminds me of
yeah,
some recent episodes, like with Togahan Cholu's microtonal guitars, where you just add
yeah.
frets, or the Macchiano piano, that kind of thing.
It's easier to have a rotary valve, to operate a rotary valve than a piston valve as well. The travel of the valve is slightly different because it's round. And so you do have, sometimes I have some fingering combinations are purely an issue of combining a piston with a rotary because the travel is different, closing the valve and opening the valve, the length is different. This idea of a rotary valve being added and goes back a long time actually to the first modern classical trumpet professor in Paris at the Conservatoire, um, Marie Francoin, and
Hmm.
he back back then everyone wrote, all the professors wrote their own books and the students played out of them, and he had pictures, actually drawings of his instruments where he'd added fourth rotary valves to improve the intonation. Um, and in fact, also I've read a book by the guy's name is Mars, an American based in Stuttgart, about the quarter-tonal trumpets in the Czechoslovakian Republic. He did his doctorate on that after he retired from playing in the Philharmonic Orchestra in Stuttgart. And actually, in the Czechoslovakia, Haber was there, and a lot of the instruments that we used to play his music, the added valve was a rotary. The instruments that were built specifically from new and not adapted instruments from new, like Henkel in I think in Munich possibly, forget where they were based. They actually built for a four valve rotary trumpet because they used the German trumpet, which has just rotary valves.
So the rotary valves have some precedent.
They have some precedent, exactly. Yeah. Now, you asked about the flugelhorn.
Yes.
So here is the flugelhorn. It's not the prototype, it's Mark 1. It's easier for the builder to get in here. And what he did was he chopped out some of the slide that leaving the third valve. He made a hole and using trombone screws, the trombone screws that join the slide to the bell, he attached the fourth rotary valve and the turn it the other way around. You see the mechanism is also built onto the valve. So what I then do is I slide this way, and then I unscrew this. And you have a hole.
Ha.
And so um, actually the whole point with the Microtonal Flugelhorn was I love playing flugelhorn. And it was originally the instrument that my father played from a very young age, the flugelhorn. And I had a dream that I was able to play, in 19th division on the flugelhorn. And I woke up and was like, yeah, it'd be really cool to have a microtonal flugelhorn, but I don't want to have, buy two more flugelhorns so that I can play in 19 and 24 and have three
Hmm.
flugelhorns. And so Sigmar Fischer, who is himself a a trombonist, bass trombone, I think these days. He came up with this idea, and I'm now going to put it back. And again, he says it's like these magicians. They say I'm going to produce a rabbit out of a hat.
But with microtonal flugelhorn.
Yeah, but Microtonal Flugelhorn. Um, I amazed myself yesterday because here we go. Ta-da! It goes really quickly.
Yeah, that's
And
a
so,
relatively short amount of time. So it does look like the flugelhorn is a little bit more difficult because you have to remove more of the instrument and change more of the design in order to put the rotary valve in.
sort of, but not really, because he just cut something off and put something in there. And
Yeah.
in I in concert, I've actually between pieces, put the 19 division uh, valve in there, the 119th, and then and then I have to comes out, and then have to change the second valve slide for a longer one, which is here.
Ah, yes.
And then we're good to go. And I've done that during the time that the public have been clapping.
Perfect.
So it's possible. I mean, it's a bit stressful because you're thinking, oh God, I hope I hope it works. But it worked.
I was wondering if it's possible to have a 5-valve trumpet or flugelhorn as well, since you've got 4.
Yeah,
Perhaps that could refine the microtonality a little bit. But of course, I'm also
maybe.
revising based on new information. You mentioned a dimple earlier, so that might be even
Yeah,
more effective.
right. Well, the thing is, I'm not sure how what I'd use to press the valve, the fifth valve. This is the
Right.
fourth valve. This is using the third valve slide. This is using the first valve slide, and I've got one, two, and three here. Um, possibly the right hand, but my right hand has to be stable in order to hold, press the valves.
Ah.
And so I'm not quite sure which finger would be available to do that.
So really,
Um,
essentially all your fingers are used up.
yeah, and things like mute changing, you need to be very careful about mute changing, or if you put a wah wah mute into an instrument, and some composers, they write open closed over the steps of 19 or even the quarter tones, and I'm like, well, hold on a minute, I need the left hand to operate the valve. Like I
Right.
can't do wah wah effect, right?
Yes, that's
Um,
right.
and yeah, so that's a tricky thing to get around. Um, but the problem of actually changing mutes quickly, I've I'm having I'm having a double bell instrument made or an adaptation, and if it's successful, then at least you can have one mute in one bell all the time, or you can leave it in there until you've got time to move it and put a different one in there. I don't know if you know Emily Coe. She's a Singaporean composer who teaches in Atlanta. I forget the name of the university. It might be Georgetown. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
But she's in Atlanta, and she works almost exclusively in quarter tones, and
Yeah.
she's got keyboards in her office and stuff, and her trumpet teacher, professor colleague, is actually the guy that was at New York Film, retired from New York Film, Phil Smith,
Yeah.
who was born in the UK. Yay! And she wrote me a really wonderful piece for quarter tone C trumpet, which is also on my SoundCloud um, page, um, under Elsewhere, if I remember correctly the title. And she uses some sound changing techniques. You can use the slide to bend the pitch in that way, or you can use your hand to do a sort of a slow wah wah effect. And because I was using the quarter-tone trumpet, I had to solve it by actually physically moving the trumpet left to right, so the audience got a perceived change in sound.
Oh.
Um, but this piece, and originally she had a lot of various mute changes that were just too short enough time. So because of that and this sound transformation idea she had, I it was another dream actually. I bought a lightweight Yamaha Chicago C second hand, which is very unusual, and also lacquered, which is also very unusual for those instruments. I really liked it, and then I had this dream about double bow instrument. So, as you can tell, my dreams are quite
Dreams are mostly about brass instruments.
Yeah, the ones I can talk about on the internet. So and so so that instrument will be also adapted by Musikgilhaus in Freiburg. That's another way of moving the trumpet on because for a
Yeah,
long time the trumpet stayed the same, as just the bore changed.
I'd say you're really interested then in not just making the trumpet microtonal, but also innovating it as an instrument further as well.
I was originally classically trained,
Hmm.
direction orchestra, and um, but I studied at the University of Huddersfield, which has the International Contemporary Music Festival there, and I studied composition as my minor. So I was very interested in sound and doing something new with my instrument. And even in the trumpet class, I always tried to pick pieces that my colleagues were not playing. I wanted to play something different. And I wasn't happy with, well, let's say the results of my playing my colleagues' pieces was better than me at that stage composing myself. I was much happier. So I went in the direction of new music,
Yeah.
and you have to be very open, and that that led me down this particular path of microtonality. Um, and so it's all sort of together really. I'm very grateful to Donald Bousted for bringing me into the microtonal world because, new music, as a new music trumpet player, I'm just in new music, but as a microtonal trumpet player, I've got to know and to work with people from jazz, people from improvised, and I've become much more an improviser myself.
Hmm.
Um, Working with people from historical tunings, meeting people that play in gamelans. It's really broadened me up. We had Neil Haverstick over for one of our Euro Microfest events
Ah,
as
yes.
well, playing, blues in 19 and stuff. And a version of um, one of his pieces is on my very first album. So it it brought it microtonality is not just about new music, and so I've gotten to know other styles, um, and I've got to meet Sean Archbold, who started this podcast with you originally, I guess.
Ah,
Savish.
yes.
He was a guest here at Euro Microfest in 2017, and he gave a lecture as well, and ended up from talking with other people at the festival, ended up um, creating this desktop tuning software
Scale
workshop.
Workshop. He had started that earlier than I expected then, because
Yeah.
I maybe didn't know about it until potentially 2020.
Okay. Yeah. He basically said to everyone, guys, what do we need? What's missing? And he
Yeah.
talked to people. And he went away and created it. And Don was very proud that that had been through coming to Euro Microfest. And I guess that's now in the hands of Mark Sabat and a Finnish lady at the Scale Workshop.
Oh, yeah, potentially, yes. I didn't know Mark Sabat was involved, but it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Because of Plain Sound. It's through Plain Sound, I guess. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay. I see. Yeah.
what I'm interested in is new sounds and creativity. I've started slowly, occasionally composing myself, but I do a lot of improvising, and I have a duo partner who's a double bassist here in Freiburg, and we call ourselves Flow Duo,
Yeah.
and we play long pieces.
Very good. Maybe a little bit earlier, you were talking about the tuning systems you've got for your trumpets, and you're
Yeah,
using 19, 24, and 48. Is that a personal choice, or is it the most idiomatic thing for the instrument? What goes into those choices essentially?
basically, the eighth tone, 48 divisions. We had four of the studies in Don's microtonal studies booklet are in eighth tones.
Is this Don Ellis?
No, Donald Bousted.
Oh, sorry, different one. Yeah.
Yeah, Don Ellis has preceded us, of
Yes.
course, our project, and he had his Halton 4 piston valves. Basically, if you've got an instrument in 24, it's then easy to half slide distances and play in 48.
Mm-hmm.
We can't play very quickly necessarily. Sometimes I manage it if the composer writes it somehow, but it's basically that idea that of taking 12, halving it to play quarter tones, halving it again to play in eighth tones. And there was a long time where I really felt, because of the richness of the trumpet spectrum, the trumpet tone, that playing an interval on the trumpet smaller than an eighth tone, having it perceptible was possibly not possible. But I think it's possible. It's very difficult. It depends upon the person who's listening. And
Yes.
so I took this approach to the 19. So I started seeing, could I find, I found fingerings that were then in 38 division. So yeah, ostensibly the project, each instrument has two tunings, and I focus and I've specialized in those tunings. And at the moment, I still think there's a lot I can do without, going on to a different tuning. I love very much 19 division, probably because of the pure intervals. I feel that the sound of the trumpet is different to a 12 division trumpet. It has its own sound, and I love that. For a long time, I even wasn't doing so much in quarter tones until we came across Laura, Lorena Bar Naranga, whose name is very difficult to pronounce. So hopefully I pronounced it correctly, Laura. I'm sorry if I didn't. And she's an accordion player, and she studied in Helsinki, and she had, as part of her doctorate at the Royal Academy of Music in London, she had a quarter tone accordion built. And there is there was a COVID piece with Fixed Media by Donald Bousted with film, electronics, and I played on the quarter tone trumpet, and she played the accordion. It's a very short piece, and we played it live for the first time at the Hyperchromatic Festival in April in London. And we are now putting together a program. So I'm returned to doing some more intense work in quarter tones because of this exciting duo. Because I'd say we were always trying to be more harmonic in the Microtonal Trumpet project. There are pieces even on the first disc, the Yasa collection, where I'm playing with electronics. And then later, my duo partner, Lee Ferguson, got his mallet cat, so we could play together in 19.
Yeah.
And leading Donald to write his 19.5 cycle for us. And then I got more into multi-tracks. My own piece, Hidden Jewels, is a multi-track piece where I recorded all the parts separately. But Donald's piece, Time Dreaming, which is the newest album, the title track album, is actually not written as a multi-track piece. It's written as an idea, as a real trio. So that is also the next step for me. I have some colleagues who I'm hoping to convince to play in 19 with me so we can play that live.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, because it will be really great. Harmony is really, the project has become more and more harmonic. Of course, it's cool when I'm playing melodically. Michael Parsons' piece in the first disc, called Melody, he picked his intervals that he liked and created a melody out of it. Oftentimes, they're taking the intervals close to just intonation, right?
Right.
mainly, but in a melodic situation. So you really only heard the intervals in a more harmonic environment.
Right. You know, earlier you mentioned that the harmonic sound of the trumpet was a little bit different. Do you think that's due to the harmonic spectrum? And is it different than a standard trumpet significantly? Could anything about the design of the instrument affect the spectrum of its sound?
I think that the reason the sound of the 19th division trumpet is slightly different than 12 is purely because we've added slides, and that's partly to do with adding weight, metal weight to the instrument, which sometimes colleagues do this to get a sound, or a different sound, and length. I think that the harmonic series, because it's a naturally occurring phenomenon, we need to do more research into this. I'd play it for you, but probably cut out, unfortunately. The harmonic series is just then starting. The fundamental is different, but the intervals stay the same.
Yes.
But it's certainly something. It will be interesting to actually really record that, and just to see how much,
Yeah, see if it's any different, like on a spectral analyzer or anything.
Exactly. And we may have done that in the early days. We did a lot of recording, and Donald did a lot of analysis, and making these albums, he was able to compare his MIDI mock-ups with what I played, and I was very, very happy with the result. It was either the same or very, very near. So that's why I think that the harmonic series hasn't changed.
Right.
Because when you put it up against a MIDI mock-up, you'd notice that.
Earlier you mentioned that you've really become part of the new music scene because of your work, and listening to a lot of your trumpet albums on Bandcamp, I'm very curious about what percentage of them or distribution of them use scores versus improvisational elements. Just because I think in that scene that's not as much focusing on things that are classically trained, you get circumstances with more improvisational elements, as well as more novel situations for the performer to interpret.
Sure. I've lived in Berlin, which has a huge improvisation scene. At that time, I wouldn't have classed myself as an improviser, but I had improvisation projects. So they're two very different scenes, the new music scene and the improvisation scene, but there are people that do both. I have many colleagues that do that, not necessarily in Freiburg, but there are. Most of the pieces are notated, and all the pieces are intended for live performance. And I think the only piece that I haven't played live yet is the second, third, and fourth Studium by Manfred Starnker.
Yes.
Impro. Well, Anne Leberge's piece Away, that I'm improvising in that, but she provides me with the material. On the second album, RASP, there's a piece called Shared Frequencies. And Ephraim Wegner, he lives here in Freiburg. I've worked with him a lot. He's an electronic musician, working with improvisers, a media artist. And basically, we collaborated on that piece. So when I play it live, it will be in some way different, because I'm improvising given the materials that we chose and the pictures that we chose when we originally wrote that piece. So it's got that flexibility, what I like about improvisation, and something's not always the same.
Right.
Hidden Jewels on the Time Dreaming album, that is a structured improvisation. Again,
your piece, right?
My piece, the last piece I wrote for myself, it's multi-tracked, and I chose very carefully pitches because actually it's in 38.
Really?
So I'm playing in 38. It's the basis. I'm going away, I'm going towards, because I'm often working at the rubbings to see what comes out. Me playing against the recordings of myself, and it's probably one of the most microtonal, the perceptive pieces that I play. By the normal person in the audience. And yeah, so that's basically the same, but never not quite, because I'm improvising around the materials and techniques that I've chosen. The title track from the second album, RASP, I'm going back now, sorry.
That's okay.
The RASP piece is based upon sounds and a lot of split tones. We call them split tones, or Spalttone in Germany. And it originally was an improvisation. And it was something that I did something similar so often that in the end I wrote a graphic score.
Right.
So, but the more that I play it, the more the piece grows and is different each way, and I can vary the length of that piece as well. So I'd say they are. And there's a piece by Chris Bryan, also an American, based in north of England, in York, called Dialogue. From the first album, but I played it again 2 years ago with him in York. And there are points in the piece where he says, improvise around this type of material. There's a rhythmic improvisation, and then short, and then there's a melodic one. And so there's improvisation in that piece. So basically, my project is very much based upon live.
Right.
Live music. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not subsidized by anybody, so most times I can't pay people to play me, to write me pieces. So either they offer or I ask and say, look, it'll get performances, I'll make a recording.
That's, a great offer, I think, for people, though, and you're doing so much for them, and that's very kind of you.
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing that there's so many people interested, and I've had times where particularly in the pandemic, where I've just, the number of pieces has got more and more, and the number of concerts available has got less and less, and so I recorded a lot during the pandemic. So the last couple of years, I've been catching up, actually doing the first performances of pieces that I've already recorded a couple of years ago. And now I've got to the point where I'm not accepting new pieces unless it's specifically for a project I know that I've got the possibility of performing. So at the moment I have, as I say, the quarter-tone duo with Laura with accordion, which also includes the flugelhorn.
Yes.
I'll also play flugelhorn. Emily Coe's written a new piece, and Ben Lunn has written a new piece.
Mm-hmm.
Based in Scotland. And then I have this wonderful project with a saxophone quartet from Italy, the Ferrano Quartet, which is also actually so far a quarter-tone project. There's a demo of one of the pieces by Daniela Bravi. So yeah, that's basically I guess that's what I'm doing. I've got these two new projects, and the dual contour project with Malekkat is also in the background. We have something coming up next year, I guess.
It's very exciting news.
Yeah, well, Lee and I have played together since we met each other in Darmstadt. We met in 1996, and we started our duo in '98 once I'd moved to Germany, initially to Berlin. So the dynamic between us is fantastic.
Since you've got microtonal trumpets and flugelhorns, that's a big. I think it's one of those rare instruments that people see and they think, "Oh, I need to write for that. He's the only person who's got that." I'm wondering if microtonal trumpets or flugelhorns of this nature are for sale anywhere, because I know that in some of these modded instrument cases you can buy the parts needed to generate it yourself or something like that, but this case seems maybe a little bit more complicated.
Well, as you know, if someone's really interested in the project, they can go to Microtonal Project's website and request through the website access to the Microtonal Trumpet resources Dropbox. In that is the book, which has a history about Microtonal Trumpet, and also instructions how to make your own instrument like ours. You know, it's
Yeah,
not there's no patent because we want people to do it.
right.
And there's recordings of the studies, there's the music to the studies, there's the Don Ellis studies. So there's much, there's possibility to deep dive. And what I will say is that, you know, these instruments originated, there was one in Odessa at the conservatory, I think it was a quarter tone cornet. And then we had the instruments that were built for playing Haber's music. He has a duo with trombone and the opera Matka Mother. And, you know, Don Ellis's Halton instrument, there was a Czech guy whose instrument I think was sort of like mine with a rotary 4/12. These days, I'm not sure in the States if Marcinkiewicz are still building quarter tone trumpets, but Marcinkiewicz played in the trumpet section of the Halton big band. Of the Don Ellis big band. He originally played on a Halton with Don Ellis.
Oh,
Monet have built a quarter tone trumpet for a customer. I've read that somewhere. Um, Over here in Europe, Van Laar builds, you know, custom made quarter tone trumpets. I think the piston valves. And Courtois, who are a French company, they've recently built a student model quarter tone trumpet called the Toma, which is affordable. It's
oh,
like 1,500 euros, and a couple of colleagues of mine have bought these. Colleagues who are not in Germany, Austria and the UK. I at Hyperchromatic, Philip Singleton, he brought his Toma along and he showed it to me, and you know, so it's fantastic that there's an affordable instrument. It is a student model instrument, and as I said originally, I really want the best quality I can get. But this allows students to have a go. So
yeah,
quarter tone wise, you know, if you want a purpose built instrument that's affordable, um, check out the Courtois. I am not sponsored by Courtois. I do not get a cent if you buy one. Um, or Van La. Um, but you know, the cheapest way is to adapt your instrument, and you know, my adaptation doesn't hurt the instrument, and so you know, it costs a couple or more €100. You know,
right,
exact price, you know, I don't know anymore.
right.
But you know, when we were originally getting quotes for £4,000, €4,000 from companies that we approached, you know,
Right.
and back when I did it, I think I paid, you know, a tenth of that
Right.
because the parts were harvested. They weren't new parts, you
Right.
know. And over the years, I've established a good relationship with Music Guildhouse. They've bought, you know, they've made two versions now of my sets, and many new music colleagues have had quarter tone setups made for them, but no one's yet, you know, took the plunge to 19. But as I say, I've got a couple of ideas there, and so we'll we'll see.
Yeah, I hope 19 catches on more in this field because of course it's easy to multiply 12 by 2 to get 24. So it makes sense that
Yeah,
24 is so popular. And 19
sure.
has a lot to offer as well. I may need to ask you later to spell some of those names for me. That was a very in-depth
Yeah,
review of the
sure.
field there.
I can't actually spell Marshinkovitz. I made it up on my notes.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's just like how to, yeah, you've heard it so
in the
many
book,
times.
Actually, I can check in the book how it's spelled. I think I think Joe Kaiser plays is the guy that, in the States who plays on one a lot. And in
All right,
Canada,
Joe Kaiser, not Jeff Kaiser.
Jeff Kaiser. Yes,
Ah,
Jeff Kaiser. Thank you so much. It was a J.
yes.
Um, yeah, there was a guy playing for Array Music up in Canada, um, Michael White, who had his instrument adapted, and I think the builder had the surname Parch, which was quite amazing.
Oh, that's funny. What a good
Yeah,
coincidence.
and I don't have any contact to Michael anymore, but I met him when I was a student at Huddersfield, and Array Music played at the Huddersfield International Contemporary Music Festival. So there are people obviously in North America doing this stuff.
You mentioned that live performance was really important to you. What kinds of
Yeah.
opportunities do you have to perform with this trumpet? Like, what does your performance schedule look like?
Right. Well, at the moment, I'm I'm sort of on a break because after the pandemic, I wanted to get things moving again, and I did a number of short tours in the UK, where I discovered that you know following on from UK Microfest that Donald and I arranged in London for 4 times in the 90s and the 2000s. There's become a lot of interest in the UK in microphones again, and many more people doing PhDs in microtonality in the UK, and people actually coming over from the States and doing the PhDs in microtones in the UK. So that led to me to be, quite active in seeking opportunities in concert series that were open to it and to universities and conferences, and the hypochromatic got set up with our help. Joseph Guzmano, American, based in the UK, in London. So I had a lot of activity in the UK. The Euro Microfest following Donald Bousted's passing, and the pandemic, we stopped doing that on a regular basis. The financial situation in Germany, specifically in Freiburg, has changed, that it's become much more difficult to fund it, and um, and it's also very difficult. I have help, but basically organizing something by myself now is much more tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So we did, we I myself and Duo Contour, we played a lot in UK Microfest and Euro Microfest. When I started Euro Microfest, it was very much a European thing. We had partners. There was a conference in Aberdeen called Beyond the Semitone. We've been to Small is Beautiful, the Ekmelik
Alec Mellis, yeah.
in Salzburg. Um, Prague was online, the Prague Microfest. And Sydney Microfest has presented not just Donald's works, but works by composers who've presented at UK Microfest and Euro Microfest that have met people that have come over from Australia, or people that have actually emigrated to Australia. We have a network. We also, we're connected to the Microfest in Amsterdam. So there's that side, so the Microfests and festivals and conferences, and then there's the new music festivals and concert series, and the university contacts. So it's not actually a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also I've been fortunate enough to play at the American Festival of Microtonal Music in 2014, and for the Boston Microtonal Society.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
yeah, so I came over in 2014 to play there. So I've had lots of wonderful opportunities. I've met lots of composers who's then written pieces, and I hope to continue that. As I say, currently I'm in a break from concerts, and I'm doing lots of promoting to try to create more possibilities, because as I say, there are some pieces that I have not played live yet, and I feel
Right.
a strong responsibility to the composers who've written to me to play their pieces live and to record them. Um, and of course, yeah, the 19 is a problem, right? Because obviously people write for me, and then only I can play that,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to get down to the bottom of my pile.
Right.
So some people think about, oh, can I make a version for quarter tone? Would that help? And although lots of colleagues of mine who play new music ensembles now have some sort of quarter tone valve instrument, that they're not really playing as soloist or in small chamber groups as much as I am. So I don't
Right.
know if that helps changing the tuning slightly. And obviously, there is the question, why 19? So if you write for 19, it really has to be staying that tuning because of the richness. We have some intervals that are close to quarter tone anyway. We have the just intervals. Yeah. So
Right.
I forget what the
Absolutely.
Yasser quote is about 19. Um,
Uh,
Something like I think a more richly flavored version of 12. I'm paraphrasing. It's been a long time since I read his theory of evolving tonality, or at least the Joe Mandelbaum.
oh yes, I feel like I read that maybe 10 years ago. Well, it's great everything you're doing to promote these pieces. Where should we look for composition submission opportunities if we want to write for Microtonal Trumpet? Would we look on Microtonal projects or perhaps a few other places as well, or contact you directly?
Well, I think all the microtonal work is comes to all the emails about microtonality through the website, the the email address for microtonal projects
Yeah.
is on the website. So I don't tell you it and it being wrong.
Right.
um, that's the best way to contact me. And we now have 170 people, composers and performers, who have access to these free resources. We also, Microton Projects also have a general resources Dropbox folder, which has less people using them. But for instance, it has information about the quarter recording of law. It has the recorder project of Catherine Bennett's, and Rare Scale are also submitting more and more stuff to this resources folder. So, if someone's interested, get in touch, request both the resources, ask me about piece opportunities. As I say, I've always got a waiting list,
Yes.
which is nice, right? It would be
Right.
terrible if I woke up one morning and I didn't have that. Having said that, I'm improvising more. I have a duo with a Belgian guy called Gilbert Ispin, and the projects Soundscapes was the first project. The second was Long Hunter, and the newest one is called Echoes. And they're very short pieces, him playing guitar or lute, and I'm playing trumpet or flugelhorn. Um, there've been some in the first two projects, some microtonal instruments there, mine. In Echoes, it goes a bit further. I've even had him retune his guitar. Um, I think the lower strings of the guitar, I think that was it. So, I'm being much more creative myself as well, microtonally. And that project's also on Bandcamp, but it's on the Jazz Halo label on Bandcamp, the Belgian label. There are things to do, and I'm meeting many more performers, improvisers, and composers, and that's great. I haven't met you before this, so
Yeah.
that's great. I've been aware of you, but I haven't met you, so
Yeah, same.
it's great. It's great to meet through microtonality.
Yes, absolutely. And people can find your music online at Bandcamp and SoundCloud
Yeah,
and your website and YouTube, right? Essentially.
yeah, sure.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Well, yes,
Adios.
great. Adios.
Bye.
See you. Bye.